Shabbat Shalom. I have a lot to say. Can't say it all. But first of all, I want to thank Rabbi Kravitz because he's the person that planted this seed. I only met him a few minutes ago. He heard us speak on a Zoom at the end of in January, to the Rabbinical Assembly. And I guess when he heard the word Holit, he put two and two together. And so he told Jim about us. And that's why we're here. We usually do audio visual. We can't do that today. So first of all, I'm going to show you a picture of who Adi Vital was. Who are we? I'm Jacqui Vital. I was born in Ottawa, Canada. I lived there till I was 18. I moved to Toronto, went to university there, and made Aliyah. I've been in Israel 50 years. I met Yaron Vital, folk dancing in Yerushalayim. We're married almost 45 years. We have 4 children, 8 grandchildren. 3 daughters and a son. Adi was daughter number 3. As you heard, she was murdered in her safe room on October the 7th. Yaron was there that day. He was a guest. I was in Canada that day. I had gone to visit my family. I hadn't seen them in 4 years, and I was due to go back to Israel on October the 8th. And Adi invited Yaron for Simchat Torah so that he wouldn't be alone. And he was in a guest house across the way from Adi. I'm going to read a piece that was written by a family friend about a month after Adi's murder. I read it every time I speak. I can try. It's entitled Jewel. I've wanted to write about Adi since I learned of her death, but I was afraid it might be presumptuous of me. How could I pay tribute to her life or capture the magnitude of her loss? And yet, I felt compelled to try. From the Israeli media, I learned that Adi lived in Kibbutz Holit near the Gaza border with her husband, Anani, and 2 sons, Negev, who was 3 years and 9 months, and Eshel, who was 6 months. Early on the morning of October 7th, 2023, when missiles rained down on the communities in the Gaza envelope, Adi grabbed her sons and took shelter in their security room. They had 7 seconds. At some point, probably from the sounds of shooting and screaming outside her house, she must have understood this was not a usual air raid. With a presence of mind and fortitude I cannot even fathom, she called Anani, who happened to be away from the kibbutz that morning, and asked him to give her a refresher on how to load their rifle. She said she'd speak to him again once it was all over. Anani was part of the security squad of the kibbutz, and they had an M16 rifle in the safe room, and that's why she called him and asked him how to use it. When Hamas terrorists entered Adi's home, she fired, killing 1 terrorist, but ultimately succumbing to the gunfire of the others before Negev and Eshel's eyes. The terrorists then took the boys along with Adi's neighbor Avital and headed in the direction of Gaza. For some incomprehensible reason, they may have been staging a propaganda or publicity stunt, and today we know that that's what they were doing because it was all filmed. The terrorists let Avital and the boys go after crossing the border. They were marched into Rafah, and just before the tunnels, they were released. Though Negev had a shrapnel injury to his foot and Eshel had difficulty breathing from smoke inhalation, Avital shepherded them to safety. The story of Adi's actions under extreme duress give me insight into how quick-thinking and courageous she was, but they don't sum up her life. I learned from the eulogies at the funeral and stories I overheard at the Shiva that Adi attended the Masorti High School in Jerusalem, served in the elite intelligence unit in the Army, received a master's degree with honors in chemical engineering from Ben Gurion University, worked in cybersecurity, danced, played the saxophone, played basketball, and excelled at everything she did. But again, this list of achievements does not encapsulate who Adi was. Nor does the following list of adjectives that many use to describe her: smart, serious, self-disciplined, talented, quiet, modest, sensitive, gentle, strong, independent, non-judgmental, accepting of others. I spoke to Adi's younger brother, Asaf. He told me that Adi's friends said she reminded them of Carole King, that she loved music of all kinds, that she didn't drink and eat at the same time, that she and Anani were high school sweethearts, that she had a dog, a German Shepherd mix named Pete, whom she loved and called Pita, that she made her own granola. Adi's friend Dana told me that Adi loved to run and ran on the road that encircled the kibbutz, that she knew she'd marry Anani when he traveled 3.5 hours each way from his army base to visit her for 2 hours in her pre-army academy, that when she found out she was pregnant with Negev, she was afraid that she might be a bad mother, but was, as it turned out, an exceptionally devoted one, that she loved the quiet desert landscape. She always said she lived 97% of the time in Gan Eden, in paradise. Dana described her as a Ma'ayan, a spring of water, quiet and deep, with hidden and surprising corners. When I asked Dana if there was anything in particular that lingered in her memories of Adi, she said, her eyes, their loving, joyful expression. I searched for more descriptions of Adi, scrolling through the Facebook pages of her family and friends. I contemplated calling her husband Anani and her sisters Ayala and Liat, but at some point I stopped. I understood I couldn't capture Adi in 5 or even 700 words. I couldn't even capture one of her hidden, surprising corners. All I can hope to convey is that Adi was extraordinary, that her life was full and rich and bursting with promise, that she was precious, like her name, which means jewel, that she loved and was loved, and that her death has left a gaping hole in the hearts of everyone who knew her. On October 7th, in a brutal attack, our beautiful daughter, beloved sister, cherished wife, young mother, adored friend, and promising academic and activist was horrifically murdered. On that horrible day, over 1,200 Israeli civilians, soldiers, and police were massacred. And the war continues, as do the casualties in the north and the south, not to mention the tens of thousands of evacuees, among them our own daughter Ayala and her family, who were forced to evacuate Kibbutz Kisifim near the border, to live in a hotel near the Dead Sea, and more recently in temporary but decent housing in Omer, just outside of Beersheba. Each person murdered is a terrible loss, and we have a responsibility to tell their stories, to remember their names. We traveled over 6,000 miles from Israel to be with you here this morning because it is important to us that you know Adi's name, that you know who she was as a person, and that she is remembered not for her incomprehensible murder, but for how she lived her life and what she stood for. We want you to know Adi, the young dancer, saxophonist, youth movement leader, activist, lover of the land and people of Israel, I want you to understand how important the Negev, the desert land, was to Adi and her family. 3 of our children studied at Ben-Gurion University of the Negev, and it was Adi who went on to graduate with full honors and a master's in solar energy at the School for the Desert Studies in Stable Care. She had an unparalleled commitment to a sustainable planet and was described by her professor as the most brilliant student he ever had. Ben-Gurion University has established a scholarship in Adi's name. One of the most beautiful things that happened this year has been the outpouring of love and support and the endless acts of chesed, compassion and care that our family received, like the large home donated for our use during Shiva, Jerusalem firefighters coming to show Adi's son Negev a real fire truck, dance performances in her memory, a garden and walking path dedicated in her pre-army academy, the Adi logo and t-shirt fund for the boys, and so many other deeply significant acts. In English, there is no word to describe a parent who has lost a child. You lose a spouse, you are a widower. A child loses her parents, and you are an orphan. But there's no word that describes the heartbreaking reality that my husband Yaron and I are trying to navigate. It has been 652 days since a gaping, painful hole was left in our family and across the Jewish nation, which is why today is so important, you being here today, to help us share our message. It is a very tough path, and people always ask where we find our strength to do things like speaking here today. Our answer is simple. There is no choice. We have no other homeland. And the Negev and Holit, Adi's passion must and will be rebuilt. We appreciate that the Minneapolis Jewish Federation, through the Communities Together program, are helping to rebuild Kibbutz Holit by sponsoring 50 of the 160 new houses being built. This support means so much. Toda rabah. Thank you. Shabbat shalom. After in Kiddush, if people want to hear what happened on the kibbutz that day, Yaron will be able to tell you, but now's not the time.
I just want to say that yesterday I sent a message to Holit community, to the guy that do take care about what they have to do there. And on behalf of the community of Holit, they sent you, thank you so much for all of you, for your support.
Jacqui and Yaron, thank you so much for helping all of us share the responsibility of remembering Adi's name. Yeah. Good morning, everyone. Shabbat shalom. I'm Kara Rosenwald. For those of you who I don't know, I look forward to meeting you. I'm a member here at Adath, and I also work for Minneapolis Jewish Federation. And in January, when Rabbi Kravitz heard you speak on the Rabbinical Assembly Zoom and made this connection, right before we were bringing Tikvatenu 3, one of our volunteer and solidarity missions to Israel, and Jacqui, we were able to be at Kibbutz Holit with you, and it was so meaningful to be at Adi's house. Thank you for sharing all of this with our entire community. I want to share a couple ways that we are sharing this with really so many people in the community during Jacqui and Yaron's visit here this week. We were up at Herzl Camp on Thursday, and tomorrow morning we leave to go to Ramah and to Interlaken. And Jacqui and Yaron are sharing the story of Adi and sharing who she was with so many of the teens in our community. There's an artist, one of the acts of loving kindness that was done for the family this year is to make this beautiful image of Adi. And we made them into postcards, and we're giving them to all the kids at camp so that they can write home and share Adi's story even more, right? We want to keep the message going. So this beautiful image, which there's going to be flyers passed around for everyone to be able to scan these QR codes after Shabbat. It's a lion, and it's the head of the lion because Adi was a lioness the morning that she protected the boys. The eye of the face, if you turn it a little bit on the sideways, in Hebrew it says Adi, Ayin Daled Yud, it's her name. And here on the bottom, it's the word, the lioness. It's really a beautiful image. And another act of loving kindness was made. After the art was made, there's t-shirts and sweatshirts being made. And the funds from buying the t-shirts and sweatshirts are all going to a fund for the boys. So if you're sitting here and thinking, this was so meaningful, how do I share the story? Wearing a shirt with the image and being able to share Adi's memory on and on is a way to do so. So thank you all so much, and Shabbat Shalom.